the live stream going, and then it failed. It went through and then it failed.
Oh, okay.
But you know when it's connected. Anyway.
Can I have a physical copy of the maps?
Oh.
I didn't.
Jonathan's bringing him over now. By the way. Yeah, do you guys want, a copy?
I can read that.
Katie, do you need them or you have?
No, I'm good. I'll just use the one on my screen. Thanks.
Sarah, you say you have black and white ones. Do you want to color? Good.
No, it gave us a number as well.
Oh, you have it.
You guys good?
You do the. Good.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Besides that, you make the place prettier.
Thanks. Thank you.
It's ringing, going over, but I'm sure he'll just.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna call this special meeting of the Altadena Library District Board of Trustees to order at 10:05 a.m. Weird to say AM, but here we are. That's good. So I'm gonna start with the land acknowledgement. The Altadena Library District acknowledges its presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Gabrielino Tonga people. Altadena is located on the stolen homelands of the Hahamunga tribal band. The traditional territory of the Gabrielino Tonga is referred to as Tongan Bar, which includes the areas currently known as Los Angeles County, Riverside County, West San Bernardino County, parts of Orange County, as well as the southern Channel Islands. Entities such as the U.S. government and non-native settlers have subjected the Gabrielino Tonga peoples to historic and continuing injustices, including genocide, forced displacement, and cultural and linguistic erasure. Altadena Library commits to learning, educating, and informing its staff and residents of present-day Altadena about the rich histories, vibrant communities, and culture of Gabrielino Tonga people, present and past, through our collection development, resources, and program offerings. So I'll start with a roll call. Trustee Andrews here. Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Wilkinson.
Here.
Trustee Patel is here, and then Trustee Lin is on his way. Be here momentarily. Do you have any reordering of agenda items? Okay. May I get a motion to adopt the agenda
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Terry.
I'll do a roll call for adoption of the agenda. Trustee Andrews. Aye. Trustee Clark.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And that is an aye vote for me as well. Do we have any public comment on the non-agenda items?
No.
Okay, cool. Okay, we'll do approval of the minutes from, for our February 23rd meeting. Do we have any
Was that-
changes?
No.
That's not the.
I think you're looking at the agenda for Monday.
It said 25th.
I know it's in the wrong spot, or it was in the poll.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, there
weird.
might be the date.
Oh, you know what? Okay, I see what I opened.
Yeah, there's one that says the 25th, but that's for the 22nd. I apologize.
I was like, why are we doing that? Okay. All right, so now that I have the right agenda in front of me, we're gonna move on to our public hearing on redistricting. Do either of our committee members gonna want to open this up? Any kind of introduction, or should we just get into it?
I can. We are in the process of redistricting. We're in our third of 4 public hearing community meetings where we have some drafted maps available for us to review. And we have Doug Johnson here from the NDC to present the maps and answer any questions.
Let the record state, Trustee Newman. Welcome, sir. Hi. Yeah.
Where are you that you could get one in? Where,
Jonathan is just a jack of
he
all
he
trades.
found you on
On
the
the
street.
I'll just jump in here
Yes,
and,
please
pleasure to be with you. I've talked to a number of you on Zoom, but it's good to be here in person. So, Ms. Parks sends her regrets. She had a family commitment today, so she couldn't make it today, but she's sorry to miss this too. As just mentioned, this is the third hearing, and this is the one where we get into actually discussing the draft maps. By law, we have to first have two hearings that are more informational, educational, and now we get into two hearings to discuss the maps. And it's worth noting that there are two required hearings on the draft map, so we're not looking for action today. If you do want to narrow the choices or add further maps, certainly can do that, but there's no required action today. So I know you won't be able to see it, but for those who are on Zoom, I will share the presentation here. And the presentation is just a refresher of what you saw here in the hearings, and then the maps themselves. One second to share my screen. Yeah. There. Okay. So just in terms of dates, we have today is the third hearing, and then the fourth hearing is scheduled for April 24th meeting. And that's the meeting when you're making a final decision on which map we wish to implement. And then of course, these election areas will go into effect for the 2024 election. So that'll be the first time there'll be by election area elections. Just as a brief, quick reminder, which you heard a lot about at the earlier two hearings, is the criteria. So in drawing these maps, we have to comply with federal laws that say they have to be equal population, comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, and avoid racial gerrymandering, just meaning that the race can't be the predominant factor in how a line is drawn or a map is chosen. And all three of the maps before you comply with all those requirements. Where they vary is how they address the different as we remember, called traditional redistricting principles or districting principles in this case, looking communities of interest, trying to be compact. Obviously, the districts have to be contiguous. To the degree possible, we want to follow visible boundaries like major roads, rivers, that kind of thing. And then the courts have said we can respect the voters' choices and consider where the current board members live in an effort to avoid pairing current board members. And then within the equal population requirement, there's a little tiny bit of buffer where you could offset planned future growth if you wish to, but that's not the point. That's really reviewing what you talked about at the last two hearings. It's worth noting, and those online can see there is a whole page on the district's website, lcnlibrary.org/redistricting. That has all the maps and all this background material as well. There's also a link there where people can zoom, go to an interactive map where you can zoom in and out. 8.5 by 11 maps are obviously can be hard to see the streets and the real details, but online in that interactive map, you can zoom in, you can search for your address, do anything else you want to do. So with that, let's jump in. So big picture on the maps. When NDC was drawing these, obviously the legal requirements, we had to meet all of those. And then the big factor was, as you talked about, the heritage areas. So trying to avoid or at least minimize how many heritage areas are divided and to keep those areas together. While also, to the degree possible, avoiding pairing board members. And so that's why the three maps you probably have noticed are somewhat similar. And that really is driven by where those heritage areas are located and the population numbers that drive these areas together. So just briefly, in the green map, if you're looking at the paper map or online, I've got it on the screen. Division 1 up in the northwest, Division 2 in the relatively southwest, and then 3 in the middle, 4 is in the southeast, and then 5 kind of comes around northeast and the east end of the district. And then also on each map is the election sequence. And that says which year each division will hold its first election. And so you'll have 3, because we follow the normal cycle, so you have 3 seats that would have been up in 2024. So we'll have 3 election areas that will hold an election in 2024. And then the other 2 will hold elections in 2026, every 4 years after that. So you can see the green map is a fairly compact map. I think yes, it keeps each of the board members in a separate seat, and it's following those heritage areas as much as possible. The purple map, so you get a little bit of shift. 5 becomes more of an east, takes in more of the east end of Altadena. 1 comes farther across the top of Altadena and more of the northern seat. 2 stretches a little farther north, 3 stretches much farther north than in the green map. And then 4 takes in kind of about half of the Pasadena border areas as you come on south. So again, just to emphasize, we're not showing these as one being the best and then our second best and third best. These are 3 very different ways, or as different as we could within the goal is to approach how these lines appear. And really our goal is to give you ideas, get you thinking about it, get your residents thinking about it, and then to take your direction and feedback to say you all live here, work in the library, spend a lot more time here than we do. So again, just emphasize, none of these is better or worse in our view. These are 3 equally legit options. And then we get the third option here is the orange map. We're trying to get a little more radical change than you saw between the first 2, just to show you a wider range of options. And you do see now 1 becomes a western election area. It is contiguous narrowly, but that's actually okay because we're less concerned continuity wise about it being separated by unincorporated or separate jurisdiction territory, as long as it's not divided by another division or district. So you get 1 is now the whole west end of Altadena. 2 moves more into the center west of the area. 3 and 4 are kind of on top of each other, north and south. And then 5 becomes southeastern seat. This one is worth noting as well as the one map where we don't have each board member in a separate seat. It does have Directors Capel and Clark in the same seat. So again, we're trying to show different options. I'm happy to talk about different ideas and zoom in on details if that'd be useful. But our main goal today is to get a public hearing, hear from any residents that have opinions on any of this, and then to get direction and feedback on the board. As I mentioned, again, there's no requirement for action today. If you do want to request revisions to maps, this is your opportunity, because at the next meeting we'll be choosing a map. And you can also, if you wish to, if one map just doesn't make sense to you, you can knock the map out and just come back with 2 to focus on the next hearing, but there's no requirement to do so. So that's my brief presentation. That we've got the hearing and then any discussion. Where to start?
Do we have people who are waiting for a chance to talk, or is it our
Yes,
turn?
I do have a member of the public who is in the Zoom room, Olivia Buddhism. I'm not sure if she would like to provide comment, but we can give her the opportunity to do that right now.
Do we open the public hearing?
Yeah, we can open the public hearing first, but she's in
Okay,
the room.
Great.
In the Zoom.
I mean,
We need to
On the-
formally open.
You need to formally open the public.
oh, I need to formally open.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm formally open the public hearing.
Nailed it.
Um, okay. I mean, I think just my personal view of it, I think it would be good for us to at least see it, like kind of straw poll, there's a narrowing of the ideas. And then kind of focus on that. So if I can throw something out there, I would propose that we not entertain the orange map. I think to me, it kind of breaks up some of the neighborhoods that it doesn't really make sense to and kind of lessens the concentration of like traditional neighborhoods. Like, I think like 4 is kind of weird because it's got this little jut into East Altadena. I think one is kind of putting 2 communities together, like that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. 2 feels like it should eat the bottom half of 1.
Yeah, and then 3 is just, it just feels unwieldy. You're putting a lot of communities together that don't really interact. That would just be my opinion as a starting point for the discussion would be to focus on green and purple and try to get a clear sense of really what the differences are. And I'll just say for me personally, unequivocally, I'm not concerned about where the current trustees live. That's just my personal opinion. Thoughts, reactions?
It's very non-scientific, but my brain responds to the green map in the way that things are structured. It feels like, I know you put it more eloquently, Jason, in terms of like, it doesn't break up neighborhoods that look like they are supposed to be together. It looks very, for some reason, even inequitable. I don't know why, but yeah, so I'm fine with not entertaining the orange map. I think it's also good that it's one that doesn't have 2 trustees in the same area for that map. So yeah, again, totally unscientific, but I like the green map.
I had a similar non-scientific reaction in that, like, I looked at all of them and the green map, I was like, oh, that looks like Altadena to me. The orange map and the purple map, I was like, what is that? Like, where is that? It didn't resonate in a way that like made sense when I think about like, yeah, okay, there's Loma Alta, there's Lake, there's New York, that basically makes sense. It seemed, I mean, there's some things about it that I have questions about, but it seems logical.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of shocked that we have viable solutions. I feel like orange is, you guys put that in as the red herring, like, let's try to gerrymander this and make it look weird, but it's also a non-optimal solution. So it's kind of bizarre that it was one that fell out, so. I don't know, like, do we need to vote or second something or put a motion to not talk about orange or to close orange, because we don't have an action.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a-
Discussion.
Yeah,
it's a discussion, yeah. So I'm with the group in green and purple are better or feels better. And actually, maybe you can give us some direction. I was trying to look at some of the statistics and they look pretty similar even between those in terms of the populations. And I don't know if there was a key discriminator in the, is it just racial distribution? Is that one of the things that we should be considering as the main thing? Is it, household income? What would you consider is like one of the key things that we should be focusing on in terms of the data?
The second category in the data table, the citizen voting age population, is a key determinant about whether or not you're in compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act.
Okay.
And if there is the ability to draw a reasonable age compact neighborhood-oriented district where there is a majority seat that's one of the protected classes, so long, very easy way of saying, then there is you're legally safer if you do it. But in this case, there is not. In each of the maps, we're getting 35 to 45% Latino percentage in 2. And then the others are all 14 to 25%. So so there's no one map has a majority Latino seat, none of the others do situation.
Okay.
Similarly, the other protected class that shows up in significant numbers here is the African American. And so you've got a 30%, 27%. The one thing to keep in mind is these numbers have a margin of error, 3 to 5% of these. So 27 versus 30, mathematically, they're really the same number. So that's the key legal category to look at, but all three of these maps are fine in that category. So that's not really going to drive a decision. The other categories are more the age, the renters, the household income. You don't have huge differences here in Altadena that we see in many of the jurisdictions we worked in. There was no across the tracks. You have demographic differences, but they're not the huge differences that would really drive a decision between plans. From reviewing the maps and preparing the maps to the orange map, yes, we often joke that if we don't have one map where you say, are you crazy? Well, we haven't given you enough wide range of maps. So not at all surprised by the reaction to that, but we did want to put that out there in case something different would make sense. And that's kind of response we're looking for. In terms of green and purple, as you're saying, green is definitely more compact. It's more focused on the major roads. There are places obviously where it varies from those, both because of the heritage area boundaries and because of population numbers. But it does make sense when you look at it, as somebody said. And then the purple map would also work. It's more, it's not as compact looking on the map, but it does try to take distinct neighborhoods and again, follow major roads whenever possible. So in terms of using the data to guide you, I don't know that there's nothing that pops up when we look at it that says, oh, this map is definitely better. But there may be some factors in there that you have as a preference that would drive that decision.
And the percent deviation is the aggregate total deviation for each of the districts.
It's a funky measure. It's actually the distance between the biggest and smallest.
Okay.
Yeah, so the green map, it's 6.8 because that's the distance between the 3.28 and 2.80.
Got it. Okay. Right. So yeah. So District 4 is that much bigger than District 1.
Exactly.
Okay.
And these maps, we didn't look at future growth. It's simply the numbers fall that way because we're trying to follow the major roads as much as possible. We want to take one block just to move 1%.
So can you remind me, how often do we need to do this?
Yes, so after each decennial census, so you'll do it now, and then the next census in 2030, that data actually comes out in 2031. So you'll revisit these lines before the 2032 election.
Okay.
And in relatively slow growth areas, which relatively this is, in 2031, you may just look and say, oh, there's still population balance, we're just gonna keep them.
Yeah, you use.
Yeah, you have to revisit and make sure they're still okay and fix them if they need.
Hopefully we won't get Lavina 2 taking over the mountains. Mr. Andrews, any thoughts?
Well, I just keep looking and there's no data or anything that helps me with this. Looking at the possibility, or what's the best possibility for someone representing that district to run, you know what I mean? So geographically, I tend to go, okay, the people that are close to the library or the library branch are going to have a vested interest in what's going on here. So you would expect there to be some turnout there. So as I look at the green map, that one sort of works for me because on the far right, the far east, you can see that purple area kind of creeping up and over toward areas that I think are likely to use it for, Farnsworth Park and things like that. Whereas when you look at the orange map, that same area is really compacted down into an area that my gut is telling me is not frequented. That area doesn't frequent the library as much as some of those areas that are closer to the physical buildings. So those are the things I'm looking at. I'm really interested in making sure that this plan works completely, and that is that there'll be a representative running for each of these districts, going forward. And to me, the only flag I can plant is the idea that the people in the west side of Altadena, those that live close to the library, that might be most likely to run. And then when you trend a little bit farther east, you have to find ways to attract them to running for the office. Hope that makes sense, but that's the way I'm looking at this.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, I actually hadn't thought of it that way. That's interesting. It does make perfect sense.
Yeah,
Think about it.
unfortunately, what you said, I think, is true, we don't have the data on that, but, so that's a nebulous thing we try to assess.
But if you were going on that, you, to me,
This at least puts the center of mass a little bit better.
yeah, the green map works pretty well for me. I also like the idea that that very far west area of Altadena, the way it drops down a little sort of symmetrical, and the fact that the library, the branches is
It's close.
close to it, yeah.
Is the entire, Doug, I don't know if you know this, but is that, you know, that bit of Pasadena that's unincorporated Pasadena that we include in the district, you know what I'm talking about? Like over kind of south of New Terry, it's not that far from you, like the bit, you know, where it says people's addresses say Pasadena, but it's.
Oh, yeah, there's a strip that's,
It's like a weird little chunk.
yeah, they're in the district, but they're also.
Yeah, exactly. That looks to me like it's all in 4 on the green map, but I don't actually know. Do you happen to know, Doug, where that falls?
I don't know the details of it.
Okay, I would want that piece to be contained in one district, just because the people who live in it generally think of themselves as a unit.
I do know it's south of New York.
It's south of New York, and it looks to me like, what I don't know is where the eastern edge is. Like, the stuff that's like, Atchison, all that stuff right in there around that bit on Woodbury, that's
Right.
it, but I don't know where it ends.
Yeah, it's a little strip.
It's a weird little, yeah, it's just a weird little piece.
It's between Lake and, what they have is Oxford Avenue here. We have some friends that live in that area. They're actually in Pasadena, but they're part of the district as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's weird because it's unincorporated Pasadena, so it's not.
Yeah, I have data on that back on the computer, so
Okay.
I can check that and report back to you at the next hearing on that. And so the idea is if there is a piece of it that's not included in 4, it should all be together.
Yeah, it should all be together, I
If
think.
if it isn't, we'll
Yeah.
give you a revised version to add to the mix.
Yeah, I would say that the district that worries me the most, as I look at the green map, even though I think it's the best one, is District 5, making sure we get some representative
Yeah.
from that area.
We deal with CSDA, the Special District Association, all the time, and there's actually a proposal from Common Cause to say special districts can't look at where the current board members live when drawing these maps. And I mean, you have a very engaged community relative to most special districts. That's like an existential threat to a lot of these districts.
Yeah.
If they draw a board member out, they won't be able to fill the spot.
Right.
So a lot of these, we have cemetery districts and hospital districts, all kinds of places. Special districts are different. You need, as you were saying, you have to recruit people. It's not like these each
Right.
hotly contested.
So again, from a legal standpoint, hypothetically, if there is a situation where there's no one running in 5 and it becomes an issue, like, are there any special provisions where it becomes an appointed thing or people?
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah, it's just like any vacancy.
Okay.
It would come to the board to decide whether you want to appoint or hold a special election.
So I think, Terry, it's kind of in their hands, right? We place the onus on them and hopefully, we get a
Right.
candidate and we'll do our best to recruit, et cetera.
Right.
But I think there's enough provisions that we're okay.
Can I just ask, was there any version that, like, when we're looking at 4 and 5, that was like some combination of the purple and green map. And the only reason I'm asking that is that very kind of southeast corner, right? I think that combined with the unincorporated Pasadena, like that really is kind of a community, like there's not gonna be much of a connection with that northern section of 5 down into that corner, both geographically and that far southeast corner, you kind of got a high concentration of rentals and apartments as well. I didn't know if there was ever a look, if there's ever any early versions that didn't make it our way that tried to do that in any way.
I think we need a whiteboard to draw it.
Yeah,
Or if it's even possible.
there were lots of versions.
Yeah.
as we were doing this, definitely. It does get a little tricky, because of, there's the heritage areas down in the southeast are large geographic areas compared to the rest of the Altadena. But we can come up with another variation and show you that, if that's something you're interested in seeing, trying to keep the unincorporated strip and the southeast corner all together, and instead of having the southeast come up with the more hilly. Areas there.
I was really just more curious, because I do, if you were to create something like that, I think that would veer into Terry's fear of you're now. It would essentially create a district that doesn't have a tangible kind of close touch to either library. Like that's the, like that would be the major downside if you did something like that. I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, we can draw it and bring it back, and I say, we're perfectly happy if we bring something back and kind of like Orange and say, this makes no sense. So,
Well, but we don't want that. Or we want that, I guess.
I think it might be helpful to see a couple of variations of the green map, maybe, I think, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like District 3 looks pretty good to me. And District 1 looks pretty good. I'm not sure about the northern border of 2. I feel like maybe it should. Like here, you know what I mean? Like shouldn't it?
Pasadena Drive.
Yeah, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know if that
see it.
incorporates too many folks.
Yeah, I could see it come across Pasadena Drive.
Right.
yeah, and actually, the reason it drops below Altadena Drive like that is the heritage area crosses Altadena Drive there. Just keeping both sides of the heritage area together.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it does, when you look at the map, that instantly pops up, why not follow Altadena, but it is, both
Got
sides
it.
of Altadena in that
Yeah.
section. are.
Okay, well then, never mind.
Yep.
So then 2's probably fine, yeah. But I think my concerns are sort of also in that southeast corner of 5 and how that sort of border between 4 and 5 works.
Yeah, so what you guys are talking about, like having like that, is that what you're saying?
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah,
Like
maybe,
cutting down here and then going across, right?
yeah, maybe like 4 eats a little bit of 5.
And then drop the northern border forward down.
Yeah.
Well, the northern border is New York, right? So I don't think you would wanna do that, because that'd be weird.
Is there a concern with size then? Because 4 is
Yeah.
already,
No, New York is way down here.
Oh, yeah, you're right, I'm so sorry.
4 is already bigger. In terms of what population?
Yeah, it would be a pretty significant shift, This, but I think I'm going to really forward push all the way north. So the numbers can flip back and forth, but essentially the whole historic islands down to the southeast corner would become this 1 seat, and then instead of historic islands being 4 would push north and beyond.
Right, so what you're saying is that if we had to divide it, 5 would absorb here and this would push north instead, right? And that kind of like spiritually doesn't.
No,
fit
I think what we're saying is the opposite. I
Yeah,
think what we're saying is push the eastern border for across and then drop the northern border south.
yeah,
I'm just flipping the numbers on. But
Oh,
yeah,
same idea, yeah, that's true. The southern one could stay 4 certainly. And so you get more of the up in the hills, the curve, the curvy roads up in the hills would be more together. city squares down south belonging together. Yeah, and we can certainly draw that and just see where it comes out.
Yeah, maybe just like one look to see whether the math works out.
Yeah.
Because I agree with Katie, I think 1, 2, and 3 look pretty solid. I mean, as solid as they can, it sounds like, right?
One thing we
Well-
haven't, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Terry, please.
I'm just gonna say, we haven't talked about voter turnout that much.
I was just gonna say, what makes me feel optimistic from a like. Building a campaign kind of perspective of, recruiting people to run and all of that. Is the voter registration numbers are pretty consistent, but the 18 and 19 turnout numbers also seem fairly close. I mean, 2 is lower, for sure. But not by like an order of magnitude that would be a deal breaker, you know what I mean? If you were thinking about running, like, all of those are very manageable numbers of voters to try to contact. I mean,
It's more
even if you're-
manageable than 26,000.
You can think about like direct mail costs, right? If you want to send a mailer to all the voters in your district or something like that. Because this voter turnout number is not number of households, right? Number of mailboxes, which is often how you have to calculate that. It's number of voters. So it would be even less expensive in some ways. Right? If you're trying to figure out campaign budgets. So I feel like those numbers make me pretty optimistic.
And we just want to point, the other nice thing is that, 2 is on the presidential cycle, it'll be 2024.
Oh,
So-
nice.
So it'll be the
Better
higher
turnout.
turnout year as opposed
Yeah.
to, 3 and 5.
That's a really good point, Ty. I hadn't even thought about that.
Really good point.
Yeah.
Wait, can you say that again?
So as was just mentioned, obviously the turnout is like higher in presidential year than a non-presidential year. If you look, the proposed election sequence would have 1, 2 in the green map, the 1, 2, and 4 up in presidential years. And so that would get you the higher turnout number, where 2 is the lowest turnout, but it would be on the presidential cycle, so if you're getting a turnout similar to what 3 and 5 will get off here.
That's really good, actually.
I like it.
Well, my main comment is kudos. I'm pleasantly surprised at how nice some of these maps look, and the data. I guess my one request is, I'm not used to seeing these numbers, and I don't have the fine fidelity that you guys have. But it seems like you said, from a mathematical perspective, these are very, very close and equivalent. And if you guys, I guess the request I have is there's 3 key takeaways between these 2 maps, for example, that you wanted to highlight, like this is a key discriminator because of X, Y, or Z. If you could present that to us with your trained lens, as opposed to us kind of, just saying this looks good. But otherwise, the numbers look great from my perspective, and I'm honestly very shocked at how well this turned out. I mean, I can't express it for everyone, but I think this is great. These are some good options, and I think we're now to like optimizing in a sense. So that's a good place to be in. Yeah.
We can certainly do that, we can kind of see what data differences among the maps pop out to us.
Yeah.
That would be
from-
great.
yeah.
There's a little summary to separate summary.
Yeah, and not like exhaustive, like
Right.
main things, this would be like a key discriminator, but otherwise, I think, they look like very good options.
And I'm happy to hear that. I will pass that, Ms. Parks spent a lot of time drawing these maps, so. I'll
No,
pass those along.
Kudos to the team.
I guess the only other thing that occurs to me is, thinking ahead over the next 10 years, but ideally to make these as sort of sustainable as possible. Do we feel like where growth is occurring in Altadena will be evenly or somewhat evenly captured by some of these districts? I'm not sure that it will. And I know that's not our concern, like that's why you redraw every 10 years, but I would just hate to see a situation where like 8 years from now, it's way out of whack.
I mean, it's gonna be a bunch of giant houses and not a population density, but like,
Right.
I joked about it, but is like, does anybody know, is that Lavina thing real? Like, are they? Or is that just like community?
I think it's more
Okay.
than anything, you know.
Do we have data on that? Like, if we were to ask you like, projected growth rates, you know, within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over the last 10 years, could you guys draw us a plot by any chance?
We can get so SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments,
Mhm.
they have it by census tract. So it'd be kind of
Right.
big region, and I think there might be 4 or 5 census tracts that
Got
cover
it.
the whole thing. The other piece of it is just mentioning, it's all a little bit questionable until there's, shovels in the ground.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Especially with what's going on.
Yep.
Interest rates right now. Most of the time when that comes up as a consideration for us, it's like, we're working Buckeye and Surprise. Their populations are gonna grow 40%.
Right.
Right.
It's gonna be different for us.
Yeah, we don't
It's
have.
a couple hundred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we know where the stuff is that's essentially been approved, right? Like
Yeah.
there's 2 and 2. And they're not gonna add 1,000, like they're,
No.
right, like there's the one right over by the freeway, the one that's being built. There's what, 2 that are being talked about along Lake.
Mhm.
Yep.
I think both of those would end up in the current 4 on the green
Yeah.
map. But again, I think at most, all of those combined is gonna be like a couple hundred people.
I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's probably.
I think Altadena is pretty static. I mean, with a 50-year look back like I have, Altadena right now feels and looks a lot like it did that back then. And there's just nowhere to build basically, except that people are doing conversions and so on. I do think the trend that will keep occurring is a gentrification of the properties that are already here because they're sought after by folks that want to live in LA County. And that, leads a lot, that there's a lot of civic pride that wells up when that happens, right? And you get more people interested in helping run government stuff. So to me, looking back at the big fluctuations, I haven't studied it completely, would be between a presidential election year and, the midterm election. It's an important point. And I think that's going to affect our numbers at this next election coming up. And, people, it makes me more optimistic that you're going to get some candidates from each district because of that. But when you're working with facts, this is pretty good. And all these facts have been pretty static for a long time, is my suspicion.
Just on the part, this doesn't really apply here yet, I don't think, but one of the interesting trends that we were surprised by out of the census is a lot of coastal cities actually saw significant population drops.
Mhm.
And to the gentrification question, it was, it's Airbnb. It's homes that were permanent residences in 2010 are no longer permanent residences. So the census those counted vacant. And so, I want to be, so if say Pasadena or Glendale were to ban Airbnb, you might see more Airbnb activity up here, which actually totally reduce your population.
Yeah, I never thought
So
about
it's,
that.
it's really hard to, yeah, no, no idea the scale of it. And all of the coastal districts, when we redrew them in 2021, were down. How are they down? Everyone wants to live the coast. It's like, oh, it's Airbnb.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit like the tulip craze though, isn't it? There are going to be so many people jumping into Airbnbs that pretty soon the market will be completely flooded. So,
And then just, can somebody just remind me again? Like, if you were to look at the green map, when would be the next election and which of these would be up?
So, the election cycle will stay as it is. So 3 seats up in 2024, 2 seats up in 2026.
Okay.
And so when we have 1 board member in each seat, as the green map does, it's just that the 3 board members whose current terms end in 2024 come up in 2024. So that'll be 1, 2, and 4. And then 3 and 5 will be up in 2026. It gets, when we end up with board members paired, if they're in different cycles, then it gets really complicated. But thankfully, both green and purple don't have that.
And again, the echo, the kudos, I think you captured that quite neatly in terms of the election cycles. Or Kristen captured that quite
Yes.
neatly.
I'll pass it on.
Yeah.
Well, and it's nice
Put it
too
into the
because it's
public record.
geographically distributed, so it's not like all of West Altoona votes in a, you know,
Exactly.
presidential year, East Altoona votes in a midterm year.
Yep.
Or something like that. It's pretty good.
So we'll do a couple, probably one or two more maps to add to the mix and,
Yeah, maybe a couple little variants on green, but I think we're all pretty happy with green.
sounds good.
Awesome.
See you next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Make
you.
sure to thank the
Kristen.
rest of your team for us.
Yeah.
Before we move, I just want to double check and give space if there was any comments that came in. Anything in
Yeah,
the chat.
any public comment, Olivia Bodison is still in the room, but she has no comment. So just thanking her for joining us.
Okay.
And we got a thumbs up on YouTube.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, thumbs up.
We like
for you.
those.
Maybe between now and is the April meeting with the April public hearing is with our regular meeting, right? Okay, so between now and then, maybe it would make sense to sort of plaster the green map everywhere. And say like, this is the one that made the most sense to us. What do you guys think? Cause I know we're scheduled, I think, vote on adoption at the April meeting, but if there's any significant feedback, we can have it and make adjustments. You know, ahead of time, right?
So Doug, would we need to post variations a week out as well?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll plan on having, I think the meeting's the 24th. So whatever the Friday is before that, the Friday before that, we'll make sure all of that is posted. Do we agree that we should pull down purple and orange?
I would suggest leaving them up there just because they're still
Yeah,
up
I'd
there,
say-
but we can work beyond framing the website so it's clear.
Okay,
This is the
Sure.
map we're focusing on. These are just.
And any
previous
like,
maps.
yeah, like any emails or social media pushes, we could just make it clear that I think we're all leaning heavily towards green. It would ask to see just a slight
Yeah.
alterations just to make sure that we're on the right path.
Yeah, but if somebody has a great point about like purple or orange or whatever, I'd love to hear it, you know?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, by the time this is redrawn, well, I don't know how many of us will still be on the board. So,
Right.
yeah, it's important to hear people.
And just for the record regarding that meeting, I'll be gone. All a part of it anyway. I might be able to be here for the first hour, hour and a half, but then I'm gonna leave. So I just want to let you know about that.
Okay. Okay. So does any of the trustees have any proposed future agenda items? I know we're meeting again on Monday, but.
No.
Okay. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned at 10:52 a.m. Thank you, everybody.